welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to interview you. So let's just get straight into it. I always ask the same question to start. What were you like as a child?
Not a lot to report, mate. I was a good kid. I was very shy. I had a shock of blonde hair when I was very young, and I was a very shy child. And sport got me out of my shell, gave me confidence. Felt very much part of, and really during my childhood, good at school, good at sport. I didn't give my parents too many hassles at all. Albeit I would say I was 90% a good child, but 10% of me had an ability to get a bit loose. So there's a couple of, there's definitely one crashed car, and there was a bit of alcohol and um, bits and pieces. But by and large, no, I was a pretty good kid. I was a pretty good kid.
Yeah, and I know that you're obviously not British, you're from Australia, and I think the audience can probably pick that up from your accent. So, how do you think that childhood in Australia might be different to a childhood in the UK?
Yeah, I think we probably where I grew up in Queensland. I went to a Rockhampton Grammar School. There was 600 students back in those days, and there was 500 boarders. So I was surrounded by a lot of guys who were off the land. They were, their parents owned massive cattle properties or grain, and so the guys that I was hanging about with my peer group were, they were pretty tough, very independent. And I think that was something that it was social conditioning and influencing that I had on me that I think was a positive thing. So, I mean, clearly a lot more outdoors. I was just because the weather's good, a ton of sport. I would suggest that living in Australia as a child is healthier. You get more sunshine, the inclination to get outside, exercise, and the independence that comes from that. So yeah, it was. Look, I had a great upbringing in Australia. I've no complaints at all. Lots of open spaces, lots of sport. Olympic-sized swimming pools, out on the farm, my mates' farms, riding bikes, riding horses, etc., etc. Just a really, really good upbringing. Mum and dad were very, very hard working. I'm privileged in the sense of there was no alcoholism, no drug addiction, no abuse of any description, no violence, no criminality, and a good education. But my mum and dad were just very, very hard-working, non-professional people that gifted me and my brother's education. So no complaints about my upbringing at all. It was great.
Yeah, and it's great, I think, to have those early role models in life. A lot of people might not have those parents that are as switched on as yours. So having that, what did they instill in you as a child to create such a success of yourself later on?
Well, work ethic first and foremost, work ethic. Mum and dad were very, very hard-working, and they were ethically and morally correct. I look back now, and they were very much about. Well, I remember one thing Mum and Dad would say: "Do not borrow money off anyone." I just remember them saying that, like, you pay your debts. Any debts you have, you pay them. You don't, you just don't take money off people, and you work hard. So work ethic. My father was a little bit emotionally distant, but mate, I'm 60 years old, you know what I mean? So my dad's 90. So you go back go back 2 or 3 generations, and dads were like that. They're a bit emotionally distant. I see, young fathers these days much more present and available for their children and much more emotionally attached. But I don't have any complaints about that because he instilled a great work ethic. My mother was a hard worker as well, and my mother was very, very nurturing. So it was just an ethically, morally correct, hard-working household. Not religious, no religion in our family, but just good, basic, solid values around truth, honesty, hard work. Yeah, pay your own way.
Yeah, that's an absolutely fantastic outlook to have, I think. And even as a child and bringing that through your life, it's some good stepping stones, I think, to success. And I think that upbringing was phenomenal for you. And you went on and played rugby for Australia, Harlequins. So, what importance do you put on playing high level sport, and how do you think it helps in other areas of life?
I think it's not so much, playing high level of sport. It's about what you've got to get to play high level of sport. So one thing I noticed about me, once I got into addiction and then I got recovery and did a 12-step program and therapy and everything, I look back and I have clearly got, once I get focused and determined on something, I get very organized. I have structure and routine. And to some extent, I have a mindset of I will not be denied. Okay, so to get the high level of sport, I grew up in Rockhampton, which is a small country town, and I played Australia under 21s. And I played for Queensland and I played for New South Wales. The only level I didn't get to was a full senior Australian team. And when I look back on it, I didn't leave a stone unturned. So I would be, I would like to think that I was quite professional in the amateur era. So I did a lot of weights, I did protein shakes, I did sprint training, I did weights training. Oh, sorry, I said that. I used to do this thing a K a day. So over summer in the off season, I'd swim a kilometre every single day in summer, and that was great for the shoulders and and just bulking up. So it wasn't. It's a yes. I played at a high level, but what I learnt was what sacrifices you've got to make, how determined you've got to be, how focused you've got to be, and how hard you've got to be on yourself to maximize your potential. And if that means you end up at a high level, great. One of the things that I with my rugby and my rugby career and my academic career, I can look back and go, I rinsed it. I've got no regrets because I threw absolutely everything at it, and I think that's the mindset you've got to do. You've got to have. If you want to get to the very top, you've got to be focused. You've got to be determined. I wouldn't say that I trampled over anyone on the way to get to the top. That's not the type of person I am. But for me, I had to know that the tank was empty. I'd given it absolutely everything. And I definitely believe that that mindset is necessary to fulfill your potential.
Yeah, that's an absolutely amazing point, because you see, I mean, I'm a football man. You would see footballers with bags of potential, yet they don't quite make the level of what you think they should. And yet somebody who's not as skillfully gifted maybe, but has got bags of determination, they put the work in, they're in early to the training ground, they leave late. It's that focus, dedication, hard work that actually gets you to where you need to be, and not having that innate ability.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. When just good. You're a football man, right? So I remember watching Manchester United when they were like great under Alex Ferguson, right? And there were some guys in there. Eric Cantona is a classic example. He was just absolutely supremely gifted. What I found very interesting was when I was reading some stuff about Manchester United, I think Roy Keane said that he said, Eric Cantona changed that club. And I thought he meant, oh, because he was so skillful and gifted and mercurial, Cantona, right? And he said he was the guy that started getting in early and leaving late and practicing free kicks and practicing corners and practicing doing extras over and above. And then they noticed, and that eventually became the norm. So those young kids who came in, the class of 72, 72, class of 92, or whatever year it was, they, Beckham, Neville's, Skulls, Giggs, these guys, that was just a great thing for them to model themselves on Eric Cantona. And just goes to show that the guys that are very gifted, you look at Ronaldo, his training regime is ridiculous. Now he's very, very gifted, but he knows to stay at the top, you gotta fight like a challenger. You've got to be hungry. And you're 100% right. there's a lot of gifted guys that didn't quite make it because their mindset just wasn't quite right. 100% agree.
Yeah, brilliant. So moving on from that, what was your first proper full-time job?
Lawyer. So I left school and I became a lawyer, solicitor. I studied for 6 years and then I practiced law for 18 months and I threw it in. And I learned in recovery and in my therapy and whatever that I didn't want to do law. I only did law because largely my father wanted me to do law. My eldest brother was a lawyer, and I thought it indicated some people pleasing stuff that I know that I do even today. But I wanted to thank my mum and dad for gifting me an education, a private school education at secondary school. I could be easily led when I was a child. Yes, I was a good kid, but that 10% remained only 10% of being a bit loose. If I believe if I'd gone to the local state school at high school, I think that ratio, I think I could have been easily misled and probably not fulfill my potential. So the expectations and the parameters and the expectations at private school, both education and sport, and the demands, I really bought into it. So I did law because I want to thank mum and dad. I didn't like studying it. It gave me but studying law full time gave me the opportunity to train for rugby virtually full time. And then, but once I practiced it, I only practiced it for 18 months. I rang my elder brother. He's 8 years older than me. I was 25, I think, or 26. And I rang him and I said, mate, I cannot do this. I'm just out of the blocks. I've just started. If I'm doing this in 30 years' time, I'll kill myself. Like, I can't do this. And my brother was very, very, very supportive. And he said, mate, you get out now and find something else. So, yep, law was my first full-time job.
And it's amazing what you've said there, that you gave it 18 months and got out. I think the speed of decision is underrated in today's world. Somebody would have been quite happy to say, oh, I've only done it 18 months. I'll give it 5 years, see if I can rise up the career ladder. Do you think that you getting out so early and seeing that there was no future has led to your future success?
Yeah, I think there was something in me. I knew, it wasn't a case of I knew what I wanted to do. I just knew that wasn't for me. I knew I couldn't do it. But the interesting thing about that is that what I noticed about me, again, during therapy and reflection and being in recovery is I'm happy to risk. So I left Rockhampton to go to Brisbane to study law. I left uh, being a lawyer after 18 months to go to Sydney for 9 months doing not much until in that time I got a scholarship to Oxford University. I finished the law. I went on a rugby tour. I saw a varsity game. We went to it at Twickenham and I said to my coach, I'd love to play in this game. And he said to me, well, do it. And I said, well, how do you do that? He said, well, mate, I don't know, but if this is what you want to do, apply. So I started researching and I found a scholarship and et cetera, et cetera. And I had plenty of rugby achievements under my belt. And I had the law degree and I needed both to get into Oxford. But yes, going back to your point, I think that I knew that I didn't want to do law. I did not know what I wanted to do exactly, but I wanted to go overseas. And I knew that whatever, I didn't know what it was, but I knew what I was trying to find was not in Australia. I wanted to travel and I wanted to get overseas, which led me to London. Yeah.
Yeah, so you arrive in London, and then what do you do from there?
Well, what happened was I was on a Queensland tour. So I was representing Queensland and we were touring England and France, rugby. And I had a really good mate of mine. We'd been to Oxford University. So I'd been to Oxford and left. Then I went on this Queensland tour, came back to Europe, and I was sitting with my mate. His name's Troy Coker. He played for Australia. I was sitting with him and he said, oh, everyone calls me KB. He said, what are you going to do, KB? And it was January 1991. Now, you're a football guy, not a rugby guy. But January 1991 was a Rugby World Cup year, right? So I'm on a Queensland tour. I'm in London. The tour's finished, and my mate Troy said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go back. I'm going to give it one last go to try to get into the Australian team and go to the World Cup. Now, I've known Troy for 40 years, but at that time, I'd known him for 7 years, something. We were really good mates. And he said, can I swear on this podcast? Yeah.
Pardon?
Can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah, swear as much as you like.
Yeah. Okay. So my mate said, you ain't going to fucking make it, mate. He said, KB, you're not going to fucking make the team. You're not going to make the squad. I said, oh, you know, thanks for your support. He said, mate, look at it. And he rattled off some names and everything. And he said, I'll tell you what, ring this Australian selector, Bob Templeton, Tempo, rest in peace. Good bloke, Tempo. And I rang Tempo, and he was a Queenslander, and he was a bit gruff, but he's a lovely, lovely man, top man, Tempo. I rang him up, and he goes, Bray, what do you want? I said, "Go, Tempo, how are you, mate?" He said, "Yeah, good." He said, "Where are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm in England." He said, "What are you doing there?" I said, "Mate, I'm on the Queensland tour, Queensland." And he goes, "Oh, right, okay." And he said, "What do you want?" I said, "Mate, look, it's World Cup year. I've played for Queensland. I've played for New South Wales. I've played for Australian 21s. I've captained my club team. We've won a grand final. Da 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 da. There's not much else I can do except play for the full national team." I said, "What chance have I got of going to the Rugby World Cup this year, 1991? It was January 1991. World Cup was in November 1991, so 10 months away." And he said, "Mate, it's funny you should mention that." Real Aussie. "Mate, you should mention that." He said, "We picked a 80-man training squad this morning, and you're not in it." And I said, how the fuck does that happen? I said, "I'm on a Queensland tour. It's only Queensland and New South Wales. ACT wasn't much of a rugby hotbed in those days." He said, "Mate, you're not in it." And in 1 minute, one moment, I just thought about it for a second. I said, "Tempo, thank you so much for being honest." I said, "Mate, I won't be coming back." He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to hook up with Harlequins over here." And he said, "Look, mate, I wish you all the very, very best. And, 26 years old, you probably made the right decision." And I got off the phone, and Troy had said to me, he said, "Link up with this team, Harlequins, and, mate, they've got a load of contacts in the city." And I went and had one trial with them, went very well. And then the rest is history. I was at the club for 6 years and got a job in the city. And yeah, things took off career-wise, security-wise, money-wise from that moment. The moment I landed in London, played for Harlequins, got up into the city, mate, it all took off. And it took off pretty quick, actually. So yeah, I was very, very, very fortunate and very grateful.
And there's one thing in there that's really stuck out to me is Tempo saying you're not in it. No wishy-washy or, oh, if you try, we might consider, or no, it's just straight to the point. You obviously value that a lot.
Mate, he's Australian. That's how we roll. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't going to lie to me. He just said, "Mate, you're not in it." And look, I might have been portraying him to be a bit tough, but he just said, "This is a fact, you're not in it." And he was implying, he said, "Look, you know, you're 26, 80-man squad. If you really honest, what he's saying was, honestly, if you should be in this, if you think you should be in the squad, you should be in the squad." Like, they don't pick England back in the day without Beckham. They didn't pick England back in the day without, Paul Scholes or, whoever, Gaza or whatever. If you're good enough, you're good enough. What is interesting, though, about that, Sam, is that how quickly I got over it. Mate, it took me a minute. And I just went, okay, I've been dreaming about this for a long time, 10 years or more. And I've had a primary focus to play for Australia. Yes, I studied law. Yes, I went to Oxford. But they were sideline things. I wanted to play for Australia. I had a dream when I was, not a dream, I had a vision, a manifestation. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to get a major degree and I wanted to play for Australia. I wanted to be impressive not just in the business world, but in the sporting world as well. I wanted to fulfil my potential on both sides of the fence. But when I got the law degree, that was fine. And when the Australian thing Didn't happen. I was really, I found it very intriguing that I just went, okay, that's it. That door's closed. What's next? And I moved on it was a sense of freedom. I don't have to keep flogging myself for this manifestation, this dream. It's not going to happen. And the reason dreams don't happen, they're not meant to be. I was not meant to play for Australia. That was not my journey. I've understood a lot of spirituality in my recovery, and I realised it wasn't meant to be. It was not meant to be, and I moved on quick.
So, with your counselling work, if somebody can't get over something, if they're bogged down and they sort of tend to just mull over a lot of things, how can somebody get over it as quickly as what you've done?
I just what I said. Like, if you think about this, the way I put it is this: if every kid's dream in England, if every kid's dream in England came true, right? At the moment, there would have been about 200 million children who'd played for England. You know what I mean? You think about that. Every kid in England wants to play, and they do it, and they get into academies, and they throw everything out, and it's a well documented thing, right? When they get cut at 16 or 17 or 18, and they're just absolutely floundering because they bet the house on this direction of travel, right? But the only way to explain it and the only way to get over it is black and white. There's no use pondering about it because it is done. It is over. So what I do is there's this thing called Solution Island and Problem Island and Solution Island. What's on the Problem Island? I had a dream. I want to play for England. I've put everything into it. I've been dropped by a club, right? What's on the Solution Island? The future. You've got your future. Redirect, reset, recalibrate. You've got a life to lead. The sun's coming up tomorrow. Don't let the past contaminate the future. Let go. Talk, and with my clients, we just talk it through, process it, and then basically let it go, move forward.
Yeah, fantastic. It's yeah, some great top tips there. And I'm really enjoying this conversation, but I want to move into something that I think the audience and myself are going to really, really enjoy. Why did you move into the banking sector or the trading sector?
Yeah, so I came across in Harlequins. I went for some some interviews in the city, and one of them was with a money broking company called RP Martins. I didn't know what money broking was, and money broking is a personality business. It's basically so I traded what they call forward rate agreements. We won't get into it, but basically, money brokers are like real estate agents. Someone wants to sell something in the market, someone wants to buy something. I'm the broker in the middle. I put those two together, I take a commission. And it's all about personality. So you didn't have to, I had a law degree and I'd been to Oxford University, but it meant nothing really. It was whether I had a personality, and I interviewed me as like, did I have something, a bit of charisma, a bit of personality, a bit of warmth that I could get on well with people on the phones and get them to trade with that company. And so it's full of Barrow boys, East End guys that have got the gift of the gab, charismatic, very personable, love a beer, love going to the sport. And I got a job there. And I did that for 4 years and went really well, much better than I anticipated. And I'm not saying I was special and different or brilliant, but it fitted well. So I'd have bankers who, I wasn't a banker at that stage, I was a broker, just keep that in mind. So I'd have bankers that went to private school, they loved England rugby and whatever, and they'd go, oh, do you know Brian Moore, do you know Will Carling, do you know, I said, yeah, I play rugby with them at Harlequins, like, and they were in the current England team. So these bankers would go, oh, mate, I want to do some trades with you, you sound like a good bloke, let's go to lunch. So I just built up, clients, banking clients. And, Sam, in 1993, I was on £50,000 basic. I got 50,000. I got four bonuses, which added up to 50 grand. In 1993, I was on £100,000 a year. I was in the first team at Harlequins. And back then, seven-a-side rugby and ten-a-side rugby was popular, and you'd go all around the world playing seven-a-side rugby and ten-a-side rugby. Mate, I was 29 years old, 28, 29 years old, and I was absolutely living the dream. I had a girlfriend, had this really nice apartment. But then what happened was a job came up at Citibank, and the guy that I was talking to Citibank down the line, and this guy says to me, we got a job going here. You should apply for it. I said, why do you think I should apply for it? He said, well, look, you need to have a degree. You got the Oxford thing, you got the law degree. He said, you've been in the market for 4 years, so you've got a degree of intellectual property. So the story goes like this. I went to Citibank and I had 6 interviews over about a month, and I didn't get the job. And I thought, bloody hell. Now, the difference here, Sam, is that with broking, to some extent, there's a bit of a ceiling as to how much you can earn. In banking, you take positions in the market and they go well, and the bank makes a lot of money on me trading, then I can earn exponentially a lot of money, okay? So I thought, bloody hell, I nearly got this job banking. They called me back and said, you didn't get the job. Would you come back for another interview? This is about a month later, 2 months later. I said, okay. So I went back and I had another 6 interviews. So I'm now on interview 12, right? And to be honest, I'm getting a bit fucked off. Like, I really want this job at Citibank. I really do. This is my shot. This is my shot at, mate, kid from Rockhampton, trader at Citibank, foreign exchange. Mate, London controls foreign exchange. Bonds and futures and all that, that's New York. To be in the biggest foreign exchange market on the planet with the number 1 bank in the world at that time. I thought, oh, fuck. And it's like, and in the end, I thought, oh, you know what? Fuck this. So I went in and I had the 12th interview, and I sat there and I was being very polite and everything. I noticed that they would ask a question at the end. Have you got any questions for me? And sometimes I'd ask a question, sometimes I didn't. Anyway, this day I said, yes, I've got a question. I think it was a lady, and she said, oh, what's your question? I said, is the cleaner anywhere near this room? And it's like, she said, is the cleaner anywhere near this room? I said, yeah. And mate, Citibank used to be on the Strand in London, and we're in an office, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, busy day. And she said, no, cleaner's not here. The cleaners come in at night. Why would you ask that question? And I said, because with all due respect, I've been interviewed by absolutely everybody else. And I said, if you want to offer me the job, please offer me the job. But if I'm not for you, just say no so I can get on with the rest of my life. And I got the job. And I suppose what I'm saying there is that it's pretty ballsy, but sometimes you just get backed into a position where you've got to show something. And I think, this day and age, it's hard to get a job. It's hard to get a job. It's hard to differentiate yourself from the crowd. But in that particular instance, I did. And yeah, I got the job, and I ended up being at the bank for 18 years, 18 quite eventful years. So yeah, very, very fortunate to have landed in the city to get one of those seats at such a major bank. And yeah, very grateful, very thankful and very grateful for the journey that I've had with that bank. Yeah.
Yeah. But you say fortunate, but I'm a big believer that you create your own fortune. You put yourself in the right positions, in the right rooms, have the right conversations. So what qualities and skills do you possess that you think made you so resilient and keep going back for the 12th interview, and also to become such a successful trader at Citibank?
Intelligence definitely plays a part. There's people, I speak to clients now, and they're 31 years old. How do I get into the city at a trading job? And I said, mate, you won't. Because the reality is they're employing, all those major banks are employing graduates from what they perceive are the best 6 universities in the UK. That's if they're still doing it that way. And I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent. It's probably wrong. But I suppose they have to cull the crowd somehow. They've got to have some sort of point of difference. With me, so I think there's a degree of intelligence, obviously, but with it's hard to get in. It is hard to get in. You've got to have the academics, and then you've got to interview well. And what they're looking for is a team player, So they want someone. I would always say one thing I noticed in my life, that people have taken a punt on me or backed me one way or another. And I think what they see is, and I think what my suggestion would be to any youngster out there looking for employment is, be genuine, be authentic, be truthful. And, when you get in, be humble and hardworking. I think that one of the things was I was popular in the sense of, when I started at Citibank, I'd help out anyone. Like someone say, "Oh, mate, can you just cover my book? I've just got to go somewhere for a half an hour or something." Yeah, mate. And I'd cover the book meticulously. Any risk that came into that trading book, I'd make sure that when he came back, I wanted him to say, "Oh, mate, thanks for that. Really appreciate it. Oh, I see everything's under control. Fine." So I wanted people to have trust and faith that I had a strong work ethic. I was reliable, dependable, on time, gave 100%, supported my teammates, and displayed a level of hunger and desire. You just can't, like, the city can be brutal, You've got to be committed, So that'd be a number of the attributes that I think you would have to illuminate and display for a potential employer to take a punt on you. Yeah.
Yeah. And with you saying that it's brutal, can we talk a bit more now about your addictions and maybe how they started, when you realised you had a problem, and what you did to lift yourself out of it?
Yeah, so the addiction story was that I tried weed when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I was 18, 19, in central Queensland. Mates were on farms, they grew a bit of weed, a few of them. I'd had a bit of a smoke. I thought, oh, yeah, it was okay, but I didn't really. Goes back to that thing also I was saying about risking. I was one of these guys who put my hand up for everything. I remember this one guy goes, "Mate, we're going water skiing this weekend. You in?" I said, "Yeah, I'm in." He goes, "You ever water skied before?" I go, "No." And he goes, "You know what I mean? Like, I would be in first and ask the questions later. Parties, just all sorts." So when someone handed me a joint, some weed, "You want this?" And I go, "Oh, yeah, what happens here?" They go, "Oh, I just smoke and you feel okay," or whatever. So I smoked a bit of weed. And then my early 20s, I had a few pills, but I didn't, MDMA, ecstasy, whatever you want to call it. I just, got that warm feeling, whatever, but it didn't grab me. Alcohol I would drink just to be with my mates. I'm not an alcoholic as such. But with what happened to me was, a guy at Harlequin's, a businessman, really cool dude, successful businessman. I was assistant coach at Harlequin's, and that's when I did my first line. I wasn't addicted right from the start, but I do remember where I was, who I was with, and I had my first line, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. That it didn't grab hold of me for about 10 years, but I was up in the city, and I was working hard. I was getting quite stressed at times, which goes hand in hand with being in the city and big positions and earning a lot of money, etc., etc. And then in my mid late forties, I ended up being in a relationship I didn't want to be in, doing a job I didn't want to do. I was cooked at Citibank, and I was also done with England. I've been over here a long time, but I had a couple of young kids, and it just escalated very, very quickly in my late 40s. And in the end, we'll just race straight to the end. I was what they call a functioning addict. So there was one year, I've told this story before, I'm going to keep it very brief. I made $24 million for the bank that year, and I got paid $2 million, and I was out of I was high every day of the year. I was on coke, and no one knew. I was just sitting on this desk. I was getting 3 grams of coke delivered at 9 a.m. every single morning. And look, I don't know if you've done coke or not. Not, for those that have never done cocaine, I was doing 20 to 30 grams a week at the end, and I was doing 80,000 pounds a year on coke. 20 to 30 grams would be like 30 to 40 bottles of wine a week in wine terms. I wasn't drinking, but I'm just, for those that don't know anything about cocaine. And the reason I was doing that, not because I was overly enjoying it, I was addicted. It was, mate, it's really bad. It's just horrendous. I was ill in the sense that my body craved it, and I just had this mental obsession. And the other thing about cocaine is it's an appetite suppressant. So I lost 5 stone. I went from 90 kilograms to 63 kilograms. And when I went into rehab in 2016, so I left Citibank 2014, and 18 months beforehand, I'd made, I don't know if that was the year I made 24 million or 34 million, but for the bank. But I got paid there was 2 lots of $2 million bonuses, probably in my last last sort of 6 years at the bank. So I made one of those big amounts, and then in the next year, in the next 15 months after that, I just unraveled really, really, really badly. I was missing a lot of work, and when I was there, I was just, I just wasn't present. And I said to the bank, "Is there any voluntary redundancies?" And because I'd been at the bank for 18 years, they said, and I was a director and everything. They said, "Look, if you stay for another 2 years, there's some, you get a number of shares and all this sort of stuff, 20 years." And I said, "No, I'm fucked. I've got to go." And they said, "Oh, okay." And I don't think they were that keen to let me go because they probably remembered 15 months ago I made a lot of money for them. And then I think what happened was I think they looked at my trading and it was so erratic. It was just all over the place. And I think they realised that, I don't know if they realised I was a drug addict, but I think they realised that I was possibly unstable. Something was going wrong. The trading activity did not make any sense, was irrational, unreasonable, and erratic. And they came back to me about 3 months ago and they said, "Listen, there's some voluntary redundancies going. And look, if you want to go, go," sort of thing. And I got left with a few £100,000 and 14,000 shares in Citibank 14,000 shares. And in the next 2 years, I literally fell off a cliff physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I entered a rehab on the 6th of April 2016, and I was fucked. I was fucked. And mate, they were very, very dark days. They were bad, bad, bad times. And look, I sit here, as I speak to you now, I can't tell you how lucky I am to be alive. I can't tell you how grateful I am to be alive. And just for the record, 2 days ago, on the 18th of June, mate, I was 9 years without one sip of alcohol or one sniff of cocaine. 2 years ago, 9 years
Well done.
clean and sober. Yeah, thank you. And when I say that out loud, mate, it is black and white. 4 days into that rehab, I was sitting on a bed crying my eyes out, just bawling, and just, I didn't care if I lived or died. Didn't care. And I was just swimming in this cesspit of guilt, shame, remorse, embarrassment. So, yeah, look, but I'm here today. And I'm counselling and mentoring today. So, Sam, it's been a journey. It's been a journey.
Yeah, you've certainly had a varied life and been on adventures here, there, and everywhere, and done lots of things, tried lots of things. A man of many
Yeah,
experiences that I think a lot
yeah,
of people would be envious of.
yeah. But you've got to put yourself out there. You know what I mean? Like, there's something in me that I just thought, I have this saying, like, it's not a rehearsal. I don't know if there's life after death, but certainly now that I'm clean and sober, I just want to, I don't know, experience as many things as I can. But my overriding thing is gratitude. I'm very, very grateful, very, very grateful where I'm at today.
Yeah, and so what investments could somebody make in their self to put themselves on the right path to financial security?
Okay, so the first thing I believe is I'm a massive believer in education. I think education is the key to a lot of success, security, investments, making money, growing, etc., etc. So I'm a massive believer in education. It's served me well. And when I say education, there's a few types of education. So the first one is the classroom education, textbook education. The second one is around social airs and graces and just being seen, or not being seen, but being honest, truthful, genuine, authentic, hardworking, and invest in, just ensuring that you are the best version of yourself. And along with all of that is things about self-care and fitness. Oh, look, I would say to anyone out there, just don't do drugs. Just not necessary, but that's easier said than done because it permeates society. But investments in oneself, top of the list would be education. And to take that one step further, I reckon we're in very, very interesting times with AI, and on the back of COVID, with a lot of industries downsizing, redundancies, embracing AI. I think now young people, certainly people coming out of their teens into their 20s, I think you've got to be absolutely engaged in what is happening in that space, the technological space around AI. I think it's just, look, I think it's pretty much everyone would say the same thing. It's a very, very fluid, changing, rapidly changing space, but without doubt, that's going to have a great impact on the future. And if you're a young person, see, you got to go with, in my opinion, you've got to go with the flows of what's going on. So in the 90s, there was dot-com companies, the financial industry was, everyone wanted to get into the financial industry. Then tech came along and you see a lot of people, coding. Coding became a big thing. And you see people who can set up their own companies and very quickly make millions and millions of dollars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I would be, if I was in my 20s now, I would be following the breadcrumbs there into the AI world, the tech world, app world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is going to be, and the other thing about it is there's quite easy entry in the sense of setting up companies in that space, from what I gather. And if you get it right, if you come up with an idea and you get it right, the exponential rate of return is like crazy. I mean, you just got to see some people in their 20s and 30s that get it right. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think that's the general direction of travel as far as society goes. A young person, head in that direction.
Yeah, 100% right. I think AI it's a little bit in our lives at the moment, but the potential for it and the way that it's going to change the world, you need to get on board with it, else you'll get left behind. And it's not something to be scared of. It's something to embrace and grab the opportunity with both hands, I think.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. And so if you absolutely royally fucked up with something, how would you handle making that mistake? What would you say to yourself? How would you overcome it?
Okay, so the thing I made a big mistake when I fucked up. So how do I handle my mistakes and errors? The first thing that I'll say is we are human beings. We all make errors. We're going to make mistakes. It's just a part of being a human being. But my experience is some of the biggest mistakes I've made were without doubt the greatest learning lessons of my life. And set me off on a different path or a different direction, or I learned something which made me evolve as a human being. The biggest mistake I made with the addiction was that I didn't speak to anyone. And the reason I didn't speak to anyone was because all the things that I'd achieved, a law degree, being a solicitor, playing for Australia 21s, Queensland, New South Wales, being an Oxford Blue, playing in a varsity match, going to Oxford, getting a postgrad degree, being a director of a bank, retiring, semi-retiring before I was 50, all this sort of stuff, I got things done, right? And my perception was if I controlled the narrative, as in if I worked hard, so if I was athletically, if I was going to the gym, if I was eating right, if I was doing this, it gives me every opportunity to succeed. Studying, hit the books, make sure I'm dedicated, make sure I'm focused, fulfill my potential there. So, up in the city, work hard, hang out with the traders who really know their shit, learn off them, but always be open-minded to evolve as a trader. And all that was based around ego and control and pride. And I've not had a lot of failure in my life. So when the addiction came along, the thing I didn't do was speak to someone, right? And I just kept going down and down and down. Because of the guilt, shame, remorse, embarrassment, I didn't tell any of my family. Only a handful, a very small number of my close friends knew. And I was going to beat it. Why? Why did I think I could beat it? Well, I got a law degree. I played high level of rugby. I was director of a bank. I made all this money. So I thought, I'm the guy that gets it done. And that was the biggest mistake I made. So what I would say now is, if you're in trouble, and all my clients, I've got clients all over the world at the moment. You know, I've got clients in Brazil, I've got clients in Thailand, Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, Switzerland, da 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 da. Some of them are like off the chart successful. Some, you know, whatever you characterise as normal. But what they're doing, what I've got great admiration for them. They're in their 20s or in their 30s. They're putting their hand up. So what's my advice? Put your hand up. You know, speak to someone like me. You know, speak to you. I'll put a plug for my business, you know. I'm a counsellor and a mentor. And I got guys with imposter syndrome, got guys, you know, like one guy rings up the other day, he's having an affair. Okay. And it's crushing him because it's shredding his, you know, his ethical and moral code. I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to be critical. We're here to understand why. And that's the thing I didn't do. That's the thing I didn't do. So, long answer. Just gave you a long answer. The short answer is find someone, speak to someone. Getting a mentor is a good idea. Get someone about 20 years older than you. They've made 20 more years of mistakes. So they've got plenty of intellectual property. Yeah, put your hand up and speak to someone early. Get to it early is my advice.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I think it's a great point to sort of almost wrap up on. And I've got one final question. So if somebody wants to become a millionaire, what one piece of advice would you give them?
Probably work hard. Work hard. I mean, I don't know, unless someone gets gifted, unless you've got a rich father, grandfather, whatever, unless you're gifted wealth, I don't know anyone I know who's a multi-millionaire, mate. The one common denominator with those blokes and girls is they've worked fucking hard. They've worked hard, you know. But can I just say one thing about that, right? So that's my advice. One piece of advice is work hard, but it works like this. You work hard, it goes like this. You work hard, you earn money. You work hard, earn good money. You get good money, you buy a house. You buy a house, you earn more money, you buy stocks and shares. You buy another house, etc., etc. And it's like an inverted triangle. And down the bottom is you. And above you is work hard. Above that is make money. Above that is buy a house. Above that is now you diversify. House, shares, pension scheme. Above that one, another house, etc., etc., if you earn that amount of money, right? So and what you are doing is you are accumulating wealth and security, okay? But where it starts is the person. It all starts at the inverted triangle. At this point, is a human being, right? You got a deck of cards. You got a deck of cards. Your deck of cards is different to my deck of cards. You can only play the deck of cards you've been given, but play it to the best of your ability, work hard, and then, get into AI. Then speak to someone. They give you a job. Your salary increases. Get security, and then you're on your way. But it all starts with your individual and the attitude of that individual and the intelligence of that individual, for sure.
Absolutely brilliant. And there's been some amazing nuggets in there. I've learned a lot. I'm sure the listeners and viewers will learn just as much. So if somebody wants to find out more about you, what you do, how can they find that?
Yeah, just Google. I mean, I've got a website, but the thing that's getting a lot of traction for me at the moment, LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I've got, and I post on that. That is my go-to. That's where I'm getting most of my clients. But at the two podcasts I did recently, the last one, Dodge Woodall, he's got a podcast called Eventful Lives, and that went gangbusters for whatever reason. Just like this one's going to go, Sam. It's going to go gangbusters, mate.
Fingers
It's going to
crossed.
go gangbusters. Exactly. So yeah, just Google Kent Bray. You'll see my website. There's a load of articles there. LinkedIn. You won't have to listen. You won't have to dig very deep at all, and you'll know exactly what I'm all about these days. And I'm helping people. I've had the me, the more, money, prestige, status, comparing, keeping up with the Joneses, blah 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 blah. Ended up in rehab. So now I've thought, you know what can I do? I want to give back. I'm in the last quarter of my life. Went and studied for 2.5 years, became a therapeutic counsellor, lay my mentoring on that, get into LinkedIn, want to help people. That is it. Want to help people and be the best version of a father I can be to my two children. That's my life.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks very much, Sam.